Okay, so I'm getting conflicting things here on the internet about whether or not to add sawdust, wood dust rather. I feel like my wood dust is pretty fine because I was using probably a 220 or 240 grit sandpaper on the table initially. So I think what I'm gonna do is this narrow crack here, I'm not gonna add any wood dust to it, but these cracks that are a little bit bigger, I'm gonna add dust to that. And I also need to figure out how many pores for the for the larger cracks. Okay, so I've mixed the two components, the resin and the hardener. It said to mix until it went from cloudy to clear, which I feel like this counts as clear. It's translucent, I can see on the other side of the cup. They did say excess or over mixing can cause excess bubbles, which I do think I have a lot of bubbles, but I read somewhere in the instructions to that for the kind of things that I need to fill in, knots and small voids, even smaller than what they even have listed in the instructions, there's a benefit to mixing. I think I read this already. Benefit to mixing mirror cast and keeping it in the mixed cup for 30 to 40 minutes before pouring into a void. So, of course, like I said, there's always questions that are unanswered. So I'm wondering if I should pour it in my syringes in the meantime, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say probably not. What I may do, not sure if that's beneficial either. Actually, so I'm gonna take a small amount of this and pour it into a different cup and add just a little bit of my wood dust to it and then let it sit for 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how many bubbles I see in the one that isn't mixed with wood dust. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some to another cup, mix it with wood dust, and then wait the 30 to 45 minutes. All right, so I don't know if this is what it's supposed to look like when you mix in the dust. I added it after I'd already mixed the two components, so hopefully that's okay. So it's about 9:15 in the night. It's about 9:15 p.m. right now, so I'm gonna wait till 10. Hopefully the bubbles are mostly gone from this one by that time. If they're not gone in 45 minutes, I figure they're probably not gonna be gone, so I won't even worry about it. And this is the one that has the wood filler in there. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I might do one of the larger cracks with this just to see what happens, how it looks. Actually, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because I won't know for another 24 hours when it's fully cured after I do that. So maybe I'll just go ahead and do them both. Who's to say? So yeah, catch you in 45 minutes. All right, y'all. So this is the next day. I gave up around midnight last night. Some of the things that happened was, I found that these two cracks, I didn't realize, they went all the way down. Somehow I missed that. So when I went to fill them in, I was noticing that I kept refilling and refilling and refilling. And I was like, man, this is either super deep or it's coming out the bottom. Checked the bottom of the table and some of the epoxy was dripping out onto the bottom. So I quickly tried to wipe it up and then put my tape underneath, and I left it from about midnight till maybe around 6, and then I pulled some of the tape off, and you're not gonna be able to see it, but I don't think. Let's see. So in some of the places where, actually the tape was over here, and of course you really can't see that, but let's see if I back up a little bit. It's right here. You really can't see it, but in some of the places where the tape was, the epoxy has hardened quite a bit. You can see it here. It's quite hard, so I'm hoping that hard coating will keep in whatever I've put into the table. So I went ahead and gave it another go since I noticed that it was hard on the bottom. So obviously, maybe not obviously, but when you do it, it is not supposed to be like this, y'all. I mean, I was having such a hard time, and my cracks are so narrow that it was bound to seep out the sides. And then, because it's less than a 1/4 inch, less, it's probably an 1/8 or less, an eighth or a 16th, but and then when I went to wipe, because they say to wipe the epoxy off the surface of the table, which I did, and I found that 1, I'm wiping stuff out of the cracks, and 2, it's staining the table, which I did read that you can use epoxy to stain a table, so to speak, which wasn't my intention, but now I have kind of a whole other project that I have to tackle when this is said and done. So I'm gonna wait and see how these do after about 30 minutes, see if they fill below. The other thing is that, like with epoxy, you're not supposed to overfill like this. But because I know that this is uneven, I know this portion is uneven, even though it's not by a lot. When I had my level, it was not reading that it was in the middle, and I couldn't figure out which part to sand to make it level. So I'm assuming that a lot of this will get sanded down, and I'm hoping that it's not that big of a deal, but time will tell. Also, the other problem I was having with this, I realized that I needed my C-clamps to secure this portion too, so I was kind of tackling this part first, and then I was going to move to this part. Now that this part is pretty hard, this crack is not going anywhere. It's not separating at all like it was in the beginning of the video, so I moved my C-clamps here, even though this is pretty hard too with the epoxy from last night. So I have a feeling that this isn't going to be like total trash. It might just be semi-trash, and I'm okay with that. So we'll just see what happens. All right, cool. This time, the second time around, when I mixed my epoxy this time, I just went ahead and added some of my wood dust to it. Only thing is that when you mix it, it was kind of hard to tell if it was translucent or not because of the dark color, but it ended up being okay in my opinion. I'm getting some bubbles, but you know, these cracks are so small, I don't think it's really gonna matter. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I caught you guys up last night that I was gonna go back in and try to refill, especially these 2 cracks here that I had noticed that they weren't sealed from the bottom. So I think that this, first off, I'm so like pleased about this. It's not perfect, obviously. This initial crack here is sealed. It is like not going anywhere. It's only been cured for the initial pour of epoxy. That was since midnight 2 nights ago, so it's been about almost 2 days. So this table is fully, like, you know, this crack doesn't exist anymore. That's gone, which is so cool. And like I showed you in the video from yesterday, it's hard on the bottom, so it makes sense it's not going anywhere because now it's curing. Now it's pretty cured, even though I'm gonna let it sit for a week from the last pour, just to be sure. So some things I've noticed, so like I said, I over poured with these because my cracks were so narrow. It was kind of hard not to do that. I did notice some spots like right here, if you can see that, where it's like below. Can you see that? It's like there's a little dip there, so I'm gonna try to refill that because it's gonna be more than 7 days before I get back to the table and able to sand it down. But I'm like super jazzed. And then this one right here, this crack here, like I was saying in one of the earlier videos, this part of the table I was having a hard time getting it level. So there are parts where it kind of dips below the table, like it kind of caves inward like this, but that's to be expected because they said, you know, if it's not level, it's gonna have a hard time. You're gonna have a hard time. So I foresee that, like here, for example, it's a little bit below, and when I sand it down, I'm gonna be combating with that. And you know, that's kind of is what it is. I will try to fill that in again and see what happens. Very similar to this one, but this one's pretty pronounced. But yeah, I went ahead and closed up the table because it's gonna take me more than 7 days to get to this, but at least by then it'll be fully cured based on System 3's recommendations, and I can go ahead and sand both the top and the edges, and I'll keep you up to date on that as well. I'm gonna sand according to what kind of finish I want. So yeah, I'll see you in 7+ days, and we will follow up with that. Okay, bye. Here's the table now. Here's a side profile. Pretty pleased with it. One thing I wasn't able to really get out was the watermark. Is still freaking there, which is very annoying, but the table is mostly flat. I can lift it up in one piece, and I'm super pleased with it. It looks really cool to me. It's got its blemishes, but I almost prefer it because of the hard work.